So tourism and businesses. And you know, that oftentimes ends up being what some of the biggest challenges is. You've got a situation in some cases that can be looked at as a one-way in, one-way out kind of thing, depending on if there's multiple locations that we have failures at that we have to fix. So oftentimes it does end up being as much of a challenge as actually fixing the road or getting the road back to the way that it was before, essentially. More of a challenge in dealing with the entities that we have to deal with, in addition to actually getting the road back. So, lot going on Highway 1. Lot going on Highway 1 normally, and then even more so if we have situations where we have section of road that's caved in. You know, whether or not it's something that is more of global instability rather than local instability, I'll just say. There's many things that impact it. My involvement on Highway 1 to this point in my time with CalTrans is the Rocky Creek slip out that just occurred much earlier this year. The turn of really could be viewed as late spring, although, you know, March, April, those months oftentimes bring some of the most rain to the Central Coast, as I'm sure you're all aware. So what I've got is a couple things today. One is I have given a presentation on this project that's currently in active construction right now as we speak, and to our branch managers meeting, and this is about 2 or 3 months ago now. There's been a lot of activity, a lot of progress that's been made in the past 2 or 3 months on this project. And so what I've got in front of you right now is essentially a copy of that presentation that I gave 3 months ago, which is kind of a good overview of how the site was handled immediately following the incident, and then kind of the phasing that we went through to get it to where we're going to get one lane back in each direction. Right now, as we speak, it's one lane. Currently we're using the northbound lane for alternating one lane traffic control to get residents and travelers through the site. Then the second thing I have is as I put together two packages that I'm hoping I sized them up to 11 by 17. You guys can pass around, and really what they are is current photographs, really photographs over the past week or two of active construction that's currently taking place out there on site. So that shows some of the heavy lifting and some of the progress that we made as of late. So I think we'll go ahead and get right into it. Let me give you a brief introduction of myself. So my name is Chad Storr. I'm in the project management division of CalTrans District 5. District 5 Project Management North, to be exact. The way we have it kind of partitioned is we have a District 5 Project Management South, which encompasses San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara counties. And then we have District 5 Project Management North, which comprises San Benito, Santa Cruz, Monterey counties, and Santa Cruz County as well. Did I mention that? There's 4 counties up there, yeah. San Benito being one of the smaller ones. But so I am part of District 5 Project Management North, part of our team, and we have, I want to say, 20 plus or minus project managers distributed amongst those 2 divisions within project management. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. Let's talk about the incident. So the incident, you kind of have a visual there, second page of your handout, but you can see basically what happened was, and it was very tail end of March into April. I want to say Easter weekend, or on the tail end of Easter weekend, somewhere in that time frame. We've got some specifics here on the next page, but we essentially lost a portion of the southbound lane, as well as a portion of an existing rock wall that we call it on that southbound lane. Obviously, right away there was a closure of that lane. Our maintenance, I'll say for lack of a better term, emergency response personnel associated with CalTrans responded and right away started assessing the site. I've got the date on there, March 30th, 2024 is when it happened as far as location and particulars go. Southbound lane at post mile 60, basically between the Rocky Creek Bridge and the Bixby Creek Bridge. And to give you guys kind of a representation as far as where the site's located, about 12 miles south of Carmel. So from here, as the crow flies, there's some significant mileage that you'd have to cover to be able to get to the site. The way that myself and really anyone else can access the site these days is essentially from the north only, given that there are other sites along Highway 1 that are under duress right now with repair projects. So
markers from what? Where's zero?
You know, I'm not.
Mile zero.
Yeah, I'm not. So what I'm not exactly sure how the post mile system works on Highway 1, but if I'm looking at post mile 60, I'm assuming, so 60 would usually be represented 60 mile mark, right? So I want to say that there's somewhere on the order of 70 to 80 miles of Big Sur coast, we call it, or this Highway 1 stretch. So I'm assuming that those zero marks are coming from somewhere down here or south, and then to get to that point. So being that it's only 12 miles south of Carmel, plus or minus. So that's an assumption that I'm going to make there to transfer to you guys. Location in particulars continued. This next page kind of gives you a representation of where this site is located in relationship to the existing Rocky Creek Bridge, and then an existing, I'll say, new viaduct, because there was a repair that we had to do similar in nature to the repair that we're working on right now in 2011 and 2012. So we've kind of called that viaduct, now that we have this slip out site just immediately north of it, which you can see the proximity, it's literally just around the bend or a rock outcrop to the north. I think we're calling that like Viaduct 1 is some Rocky Creek Viaduct 1 now is some of the terminology that's been used. So that kind of gives you a drone footage type particulars on where we're at. So the first phase of the work was an initial response to the emergency, which included temporary stabilization with rock dowels. So essentially what took place is that we installed horizontal rock dowels into the bluff and vertical rock dowels in the bluff. And then once those were installed to essentially temporarily stabilize it, then we installed a shotcrete reinforced on the thinner side concrete facing to kind of hold that in place temporarily. And so I think if you flip over to next sheet, you see basically a drone from above footage of installation of the temporary stabilization rock dowels. And then next sheet you'll see
how long after the initial erosion was this, like say that was this picture taken roughly?
Oh, this is within weeks. Within weeks. I mean days to weeks. Go ahead, question?
Quick question just about the incident in general.
Sure.
Did the rock wall beforehand look like it had a lot of erosion, or did like the cliff itself just fail because of the erosion underneath that caused the growth?
The second. Yeah. So we had, it's my understanding that we had no indication that this incident was going to happen. Like, you know, we didn't, it's my understanding that, you know, like longitudinal cracks in the road, you know, telltale signs of something was about to happen. It's my understanding this kind of came out of nowhere. And yeah, so it's not the rock wall that failed that caused the slip out behind it. It's the slip out behind it that took the wall with it, essentially. And then shortly after the actual moment of the incident, there was actually, and I don't have a photo of it in here, the rock wall, a section of it kind of still hung there in space, and then that shortly gave way after, which isn't much of a surprise, right? Because this existing rock wall is pretty dated. It's not, you know, new current standard type construction. So that wasn't too surprising. This other photo here, basically a complete temporary stabilization complete, and so you can see the shotcrete face, and actually we call this temporary, but in my mind, it's beautiful temporary. I mean, you know, I have to say they molded that shotcrete, I think, as best they could, to where for a temporary stabilization, I was thoroughly impressed just based on my experience with projects of similar nature. But the one thing that was, in my mind, probably the most impressive, in addition to the actual coordination with residents and emergency personnel, first responders, and businesses in the area, that's a monumental thing in itself to be able to coordinate once something happens, is roadway open to one-lane traffic with alternating traffic control by May 17, 2024. So if you do the math on that, that's a true testament, in my mind, to how quickly Caltrans can respond in the event of an emergency like this. You're looking at essentially 6 weeks. We went from the initial photograph that you saw to what you see here on this sheet. Now, next we'll kind of get into, while this was going on, I was not actually physically involved in the temporary stabilization operation. I was not managing that effort, but I was brought on within days to a week, I'll say, maybe a week and a half, that I was being asked to manage the effort to now we need to get into, okay, now we need to get to a lane back in each direction, as well as facilitate that we were currently working under a temporary stabilization and needed to get a permanent repair in place. So that's where we go into the permanent repair of the viaduct structure. Very similar to the 2011-2012 site that I had mentioned just south of there. Our viaduct structure that we are now building is a full width, 3-span, 200-foot long structure. The end result is going to be a 12-foot travel lane in each direction, with 4-foot wide shoulders in each direction. And ST75 CalTrans standard railing, which is similar to the railing that's in this 2011-2012 repair, although it's enhanced. And when I say enhanced, I mean staining of the metal elements, and then also integral color and all the concrete elements for that railing. Did you need a copy, or you're good? Okay, cool. Yeah, because I've got extras. I was worried I was going to be short, so I'm happy about that. Continuing to talk about the permanent repair, the viaduct structure that we're building. This is kind of and at the time this was draft, right? We've progressed a lot. You can see the date on there of August 1st, 2024 in the upper right-hand corner. This is one plan sheet, the general plan sheet out of the plan set to be able to actually bring a contractor on board and build this. You can see that in the mirrored elevation view up there. I realize it's kind of small on 8.5 by 11, but a 3-span structure. You have an abutment on either end and 2 bents right in between. So that makes up your 3 spans between the bents and the abutments. The way in which we're building this, and if you take a look at the typical section on the right, is a 2-stage kind of construction. So we are currently in the process of building stage 1, which will essentially become the southbound lane. And then we're gonna, once that's complete, we're gonna flip over and build the northbound side of this viaduct. So basically, at each bent location, intermediate to the abutments, there are 2 deep foundations, or what we're calling cast-in drilled hole shafts, which is essentially where they go out, drill a hole of a specified diameter to a certain depth, and lower a steel reinforcement cage down there, and then place concrete, usually from the bottom up, to provide foundation for this new structure. Talking about challenges, some of these challenges were more of a challenge than others. Oftentimes in our projects, we have to deal with just about everything based on the size and scale of our projects, the location of the projects, typically, environmental type constraints, permitting from some of these regulatory agencies, and right-of-way impacts, right? Like if we have to encroach into somebody else's right of way, those are typically what impacts our projects the most significantly from a time of completion standpoint. You know, some of those are listed on this list. But for this project, I'll kind of go through them. Material variability north to south, existing Rocky Creek Bridge to viaduct railing transition. We're right up against an existing bridge, right? So we had to figure out, hey, by the time we end up getting complete with this project, it's going to be right up against an existing bridge. So how do we mesh those two? Obviously, access and the height and the steepness of slope. That bluff is round about 170 to 180 feet tall at that location. And it doesn't, you know, the relief isn't such that it's gradual down to the beach. It's literally beach and straight up. So obviously that presents some challenges from a constructability standpoint in providing access. But so that was one of the challenges. I say railing type. I had said that we're going, the project is going to include an ST75 standard railing. There has been a lot of discussion. I'll just try to keep it simple. A lot of discussion, a lot of input. You know, have had to deal with the public and Coastal Commission with regards to railing. Some of that conversation still kind of continues to linger.
They want more transparency through the railing?
Well, no, the SD, well, yeah. I mean, they a lot of what, just to summarize, transparency is desired, right? Because you want to be able to have the same view that you did before. Yet you have to mesh that with current standards, current safety standards as handed down by CalTrans, which is based on numerous things. But then there is also that, okay, we want it transparent, but you also want it to look a certain way, right? So that's where you start getting into color and stains and texture and where you stop certain things. So to answer your question, transparency is huge in the eyes of Coastal Commission, from what I've gathered. You know, protecting that visual openness to the ocean for the motorist and then whoever else is going to be using. Because you remember, we have a significant bicycle contingency all along the coast. So that's something else that had to be taken in mind. I will say, you know, before this incident happened, the existing configuration of the roadway from a geometric standpoint is little to no shoulder. It's anywhere from 0 to 2 feet of shoulder through the whole entire site. And then it kind of, you know, you'd get a little more coming north of it or south of it. But with this project, it's going to end up with a 4-foot-ish shoulder. So, you know, you're talking about huge margin of improvement there with regards to accessibility. Question?
Yeah, I was curious because I go to Carmel.
Okay. Okay.
I was interested. I've been noticing for the last, like, I think at least since I've been going here around like January, February of last year.
Yeah.
There were like large flatbed trucks with like car-sized boulders on them that were going like to and from like slow all the way up.
Yes.
Is that for
Yeah.
the shoulder, or is that...
Not for this project. Yeah, that is probably, and I have heard about what you're talking about. Yeah, like Volkswagen sized boulders, that kind of thing. Yeah. We've got you know, multiple sites along Highway 1. One of which the repair I think was just completed. The other one is ongoing, and then had some particular other things come up with it. So one or more of those sites is likely where those boulders were being taken. Yeah. So continue to talk about challenges. Existing utilities. Actually, I have this on the list, but it was probably one of the most least impactful issues with this project. From what I understand, single AT&T line going through the site. I want to say there were a couple others, but no impact. Impact to AT&T, but it actually ended up being one of the, I would say on this entire list right here, one of the least impactful challenges that we had to deal with. We've rounded the corner. We rounded the corner on that quite a while ago. So there is relocation work that needs to be done associated with it, but it was very it was very expeditious, relatively speaking, to get our arms around that. So jurisdictional agency influence and input has and kind of continues to be a factor in the project. but we are continuing to make progress. Public notification and press releases, PIO, right? Our public information officers, nonstop, and doing what they do best. We've got a really good team of individuals that handle that. There was a huge effort when the incident first took place, right? True urgency there, right? Incident happened. Okay, now we have to have the conversations that we normally have in a planning atmosphere, like real time. Like, how are we going to handle it now, right? And over the next few weeks. Then that transitioned into, okay, we're going to develop what we're going to build to permanently repair this. And then we had time to think about how we're going to handle it from a notification purpose. And a lot of that ties into the stage 1 and the stage 2 construction, which essentially enabled us to have one lane of traffic with some sort of traffic control in place throughout the course of construction over the past few months. But that's always a challenge, right? Because things come up. You get certain events in the area that certain people want accommodations for, and so it's kind of an ongoing thing as we go through construction. Go ahead.
I was wondering, during the initial construction,
yes,
how did you guys route traffic?
You're talking about during the initial temporary stabilization? One lane of traffic with alternating traffic control. So very initially, it was traffic control personnel out there, manual, i.e. boots on the ground folks with paddle boards, cone off the site, and then it's communication, usually via walkie-talkie between the two on either end. Stop traffic, flag through, alternating. Now you can go northbound, southbound. When it initially, immediately happened, there was an immediate initial closure. That was minimized to the best extent possible. I can't remember but we're talking on the terms of hours rather than days. So it went from hours to days to hours of having to have an immediate, the road is closed right now, to then one lane alternating traffic control manual, then to automatic one lane alternating traffic control. So that's where we set up temporary signals. And that lasted through the temporary stabilization, and then that essentially went right into the permanent construction. So, over the past few months and over the next few months, it'll be that one lane alternating traffic control with an automatic traffic signal. Plus or minus. Obviously when you have equipment that has to get across the road, then you end up having some blend of manual traffic control in there too. So.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering because I saw there was a big crane and it looked like it was taking the whole road.
Right. Yeah. So throughout the course of permanent construction, and it on an intermittent nature, based on the size of the equipment, you're correct. Yeah, there's got to be, okay, we're gonna have a full closure for 2 hours on this day. And that's where our PIO people come in. They have to figure out a way to communicate that, hey, this is what we think it's going to take. Be prepared for this. How much notification do these first responders require? But you're exactly right. Yeah, there have been times where the road is completely closed, but that's communicated in advance and everybody's prepared for it.
Is there an alternative route near the area, or is it?
Well, no, usually.